In the grand tapestry of the Ottoman Empire, where power, loyalty, and intrigue wove together the destinies of sultans and their kin, few stories are as poignant or as tragic as that of Prince Mustafa. Born as the first son of Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent and his consort Hürrem Sultan, Mustafa grew up under the watchful eyes of a father who, for much of his youth, cherished him as both heir and hope for the future. Yet, the brilliance of this prince, his intelligence, valor, and noble bearing, would ultimately serve not as a shield, but as the very reason for his downfall. At the heart of Mustafa's tragedy lies the complex and perilous world of the Ottoman court, where love, power, and ambition collided, and where the whisper of a favored consort could tip the scales of fate. From the moment of his birth, Mustafa's life was intertwined with the grandeur and expectations of empire. As the eldest son, he was named Crown Prince, the presumptive heir to one of the world's most powerful realms. The Ottoman dynasty had, by the 16th century, become a vast and formidable force, stretching across continents. Within its palatial walls, the future of the empire was often determined not just on the battlefield or in council chambers, but within the private chambers of the Sultan's harem. It was here that the seeds of Mustafa's undoing were sown. Mustafa's early years were marked by demonstration of capability and promise. He was entrusted with the governance of Manisa, a vital province in western Anatolia, an honor reserved for those being groomed for the throne. In his role as governor, Mustafa distinguished himself as a just and able administrator, earning the loyalty of his soldiers and the affection of the people. His charisma and leadership inspired those around him, and his reputation for fairness and courage spread far beyond the province he ruled. The Ottoman elite and the populace alike saw in him the embodiment of the virtues they hoped for in a future sultan. But the Ottoman Empire was also a world of fierce rivalries, where the path to the throne was rarely straightforward, and where the shadows cast by the walls of Topkapi Palace concealed more than they revealed. The sultans, by tradition, could have multiple consorts, and the birth of multiple sons often led to dangerous contests for succession. For all his talents, Mustafa was not the only contender. In the harem, another powerful force was rising, Haseki Hürrem Sultan, known in the West as Roxolana. Roxolana's own journey was as remarkable as it was unlikely. Born in what is now Ukraine, she was captured and brought to the Ottoman court as a slave. There, she captivated Sultan Suleiman with her intelligence, wit, and beauty. Over time, Roxolana rose through the ranks, eventually becoming Suleiman's legal wife, a rare honor for a sultana and a testament to the depth of the sultan's affection. With her influence, the nature of the Ottoman court began to change. Roxolana was fiercely protective of her own children, especially her son Selim, who, by virtue of his birth, was also a candidate for succession, though not as favored as Mustafa. It was within this crucible of ambition and maternal instinct that Roxolana's machinations took form. Aware of Mustafa's popularity and his father's pride in him, she recognized that her own son's path to the throne would always be blocked so long as Mustafa lived. The stakes were nothing less than the future of the empire, and in the calculus of power, personal sentiment rarely carried the day. The harem, for all its luxury, was a place of ceaseless political maneuvering. Roxolana, skilled in the art of subtle persuasion, began to sow seeds of doubt in Suleiman's mind about Mustafa's loyalty. She played upon the Sultan's deepest fears, that a beloved son, emboldened by popular support and the loyalty of the army, might one day rise against his own father. In a world where fratricide and betrayal were not uncommon, even the mere suggestion of rebellion could be a death sentence. It is said that Roxolana, with the aid of her allies, orchestrated a campaign of whispers and accusations, carefully feeding Suleiman tales of Mustafa's alleged ambitions. Letters were forged, rumors were spread, and the specter of conspiracy was conjured with chilling precision. The Sultan, long accustomed to the burdens of rule and the dangers of intrigue, began to waver. The trust that had once bound father and son started to erode, replaced by suspicion and dread. For Mustafa, The signs of growing danger must have been unmistakable. He was not naive to the realities of court life, nor to the precariousness of his own position. Yet, bound by filial duty and the codes of the empire, he continued to serve faithfully, even as the storm clouds gathered. The loyalty of his soldiers and the love of the people, once his greatest strengths, now became the very evidence of the threat he was perceived to pose. In 1553, as the Ottoman army campaigned in Persia, the fateful moment arrived. Sultan Suleiman summoned Mustafa to his tent. The prince, ever dutiful, obeyed. What occurred next remains one of the most harrowing episodes in Ottoman history. In the confines of the imperial pavilion, Mustafa was confronted not with a father's embrace, but with the cold machinery of execution. Accused of treason, he was strangled by the Sultan's guards as Suleiman, it is said, watched from behind a curtain. Mustafa was just 22 years old. His death sent shockwaves through the empire. Soldiers who had revered him wept openly. The people who had seen in him the promise of a just and glorious reign mourned his loss. Even among the Ottoman elite, there was a sense of profound disturbance. Many saw the hand of Roxolana in the tragedy, and in the years that followed, her influence, and that of her son Selim, would continue to shape the destiny of the empire. The death of Prince Mustafa marked not just the end of an individual, but the loss of a symbol, of hope, merit, and the possibility of a more just rule. Historians and chroniclers, both in the Ottoman world and beyond, have since debated the motives and the morality of Suleiman's decision. Some point to the iron laws of dynastic survival, the ever-present threat of rebellion, and the necessity, however cruel, of eliminating potential rivals. Others see in the story a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition, the corrosive power of jealousy, and the tragic costs of political intrigue. For Sultan Suleiman, the execution of his son was a wound from which he would never fully recover. Contemporary sources recount that the Sultan grieved deeply, haunted by the memory of the son he had once so proudly groomed for leadership. The decision, influenced by the whispers and schemes of the palace, cast a long shadow over the remainder of his reign. Suleiman, who had presided over the Ottoman Empire at its zenith, was forced to reckon with the personal cost of power. In the aftermath, the Ottoman court was forever changed. The precedent set by Mustafa's execution sent a chilling message to future generations of princes and sultanas. In the struggle for succession, there could be no room for sentiment, no safety in talent or popularity. The very qualities that made a prince beloved could just as easily mark him for death. Yet, even as the years passed and new rulers ascended the throne, the story of Prince Mustafa endured. It was retold in poems, songs, and in later centuries, in novels and films. The image of the noble prince, betrayed by the machinations of the harem and the suspicion of his father, captured the imagination of generations. For many, he became a symbol of lost potential, a reminder of how greatness can be extinguished not by failure, but by the very forces that fear it most. Modern historians, revisiting the sources and piecing together the events of that fateful year, now see Mustafa's execution as emblematic of the wider dynamics at play within the Ottoman court. The role of Roxolana, while central, is understood as part of a larger system in which women of the harem wielded significant, if often invisible, power. The harem itself was not merely a place of seclusion, but a crucible of political ambition, where alliances were forged and destinies decided. Roxolana's own story in this context is as complex as that of Mustafa. Her rise from slavery to the pinnacle of imperial power is a testament to her intelligence, resilience, and political acumen. In seeking to secure the throne for her own sons, she was acting within a system that rewarded cunning and punished weakness. For Roxolana, and for many women like her, the stakes were existential. The fate of her children and her own survival depended on her ability to navigate the treacherous waters of palace politics. Yet the consequences of these machinations were profound. With Mustafa out of the way, Roxolana's son Selim eventually became sultan. Selim II's reign, however, was markedly different from what many had hoped for with Mustafa. Known more for his indulgence than his leadership, Selim's time on the throne saw the beginning of a gradual decline in the authority and effectiveness that had characterized Suleiman's era. For many observers, the death of Mustafa came to symbolize a turning point, a moment when intrigue triumphed over merit, and when the promise of renewal was replaced by the reality of compromise. The tragedy of Mustafa also changed the way Ottoman succession would be handled in the centuries to follow. The fear of rivalry among princes led to the formalization of the practice of fratricide, where new sultans would eliminate their brothers to secure their rule. This brutal system, while designed to prevent civil war, exacted a terrible human cost and left an indelible mark on the dynasty's legacy. In the broader context of world history, Mustafa's story resonates as a universal tale of the dangers of unchecked ambition, the fragility of trust, and the enduring human desire for justice. The lessons of his life and death continue to echo in the halls of power, wherever ambition and suspicion vie for supremacy.
Today, the name of Prince Mustafa is remembered not only as a cautionary tale, but as a symbol of potential unrealized. Visitors to the sites of the Ottoman Empire, its palaces, mosques, and mausoleums, are reminded of the glories and sorrows of a dynasty that once ruled half the world. The story of Mustafa, retold in countless forms, stands as a testament to the enduring power of history to shape our understanding of the present. In reflecting on the tragedy of Mustafa, one is struck by the complexity of the forces at play: the love of a father, the ambition of a mother, the loyalty of soldiers, the hopes of a people. In the end, the fate of the Ottoman Empire, like that of so many great powers, was shaped as much by the private dramas of its rulers as by the grand sweep of events. The legacy of Prince Mustafa endures, a reminder of the human cost of empire and of the timeless struggle between trust and suspicion, hope and fear. As the centuries pass, the story of Mustafa continues to captivate scholars, artists, and all who seek to understand the intricate dance of power and destiny. In the life and death of this gifted prince, we find a mirror for our own aspirations and anxieties, a story as old as history itself, and as relevant as the world we inhabit today.